The naysayers are the majority of the American public. It's the American people who are the naysayers. Oppose new tariffs on other countries. All goods, look at this. 56% of Americans oppose new tariffs on all goods. How about cars in particular? 56% of Americans oppose new tariffs on imported cars and car parts. Look, the bottom line is the American people oppose. No, no, no. They do not want new tariffs. I looked at a ton of polling. It's really hard to find any in which you find folks supporting new tariffs, maybe against China, but against all other countries, especially our allies. No, no, no. Oppose.
So Caroline Levitt again told Kate in that discussion that the president is laser focused on reducing prices. What do voters say that they believe the tariffs will do to prices?
What do voters believe the tariffs will do to prices? At least in the short term, tariffs will raise prices. Again, what do we get here? 72% of Americans overall say that the prices will go up in the short term. How about among Republicans, the Republican base? This was a shocker to me. 64% of Republicans believe that tariffs will in fact cause prices to go up in the near term. And get this, just 5% of Americans overall believe that tariffs, at least in the short term, will bring down prices. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know, Mr. Berman, that 72 beats 5.
So this is a huge move, and it's a huge restructuring of the global economic order, whether you like it or not. Do Americans feel like there should be, or where does this reordering of the global economic order rank for them?
Look at this. Should be a high priority for Trump. Number one, the economy at 82. Number two, inflation, 80. Look at this. Tariffs. 8 out of 8 on the list in terms of things that should be a high priority for Donald Trump at just 30%, 50 points less than inflation. Americans want simply put nothing to do with it.
We have breaking news. A look at the markets just minutes after the opening bell this morning as Wall Street reacts to President Trump's new tariffs. You can see the giant red arrow pointing down. Joining us now, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans and NBC News senior business analyst and host, of course, of the 11th Hour, Stephanie Ruhle. Lauren Leader back with us as well. Steph, let's just get your blink reaction here to the markets. S&P 500 down 3%. My phone full of push alerts with dire news in terms of reactions to President Trump's new tariffs.
And I'll tell you, my phone in the last 24 hours, I've been speaking to former Trump administration officials from his first term, CEOs of consumer products companies, Wall Street investors, and economists. And people are sort of blown away on the negative, because what's really lost here, Jonathan, is trust. We have the biggest, strongest economy. Even the math that they're using in this idea that having a trade deficit means all these other countries are ripping us off, that's not the case. There have been some bad trade deals over the years, without a doubt. But us having a trade deficit with other countries, no, we're the biggest, best economy. We buy more stuff. But when I say a loss of trust, just think about this. When you talk about trading, these are long-term partnerships and investments. We told all these manufacturers for years.
Because he puts so much emphasis, some would say too much emphasis, on how the stock market's doing to sort of gauge the health of the economy. But it does not seem to be the case this time around.
He used the stock market as his own personal poll or a letter grade in school, and he really wore it as a badge. Even yesterday at the Rose Garden, he was talking about how great the stock market was under his first administration. We call that a stock market put, a Trump put, that maybe if things, to use an options term, that maybe if things go really sour, he would change his behavior this time. I don't think that's the case anymore. You've heard the White House officials talking about the 10-year note yield. That is the thing they're talking about. It's declining. That's lowering interest rates for consumers and businesses. That's a good thing. Well, it's declining because there's fear about his economic agenda and what it's going to do to the economy. So it's falling for a bad reason, not a good reason, but that's the number that they're starting to use now. So I don't think that they're looking at the stock market, at least so far, a 1,200 point, near the lows of the day, a 1,200 point decline, something that he would have said, if it were the Biden administration, he would have said this is impeachable, having a stock market fall like this. But they're not. This is not one of their metrics anymore.
And to the haphazard nature of these tariffs, some of these are on a number of countries that include several uninhabited islands. The Heard Island and the McDonald Islands, which are located in the sub-Antarctic Indian Ocean, made Trump's list. While teeming with seals, penguins, and other birds, these islands have no permanent human population.
For 40 years, we've had an economy that rewards people who ship American jobs overseas and raises taxes on American workers, and we're flipping that on its head. We're going to cut taxes for American workers and for American companies that build here. We're going to make it harder to ship American jobs overseas. It's a total shift in the way that we've done economic policy in the United States of America, but it was necessary.
That was Vice President J.D. Vance earlier this morning talking about why President Trump decided to impose all these tariffs on some of America's top trading partners. With us now is Texas Democratic Congressman Greg Casar. He sits on the Oversight and Education and Workforce Committees. He is also chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It's always a pleasure to see you, Congressman. Thank you for being with us. On X, you posted, tariffs can be a good tool, like a scalpel is a good tool in surgery. What Donald Trump is doing is more like using a chainsaw for brain surgery. So what would be, Congressman, a scalpel in the world of tariffs?
Tariffs can be a good tool if you actually person in the world and be able to be on phone calls with foreign leaders and feel like a big man. But we know that he doesn't actually care about American workers, because at the same time that he's putting these tariffs into effect, he's trying to give billionaires and big CEOs in America and across the world an enormous tax break. So what folks at home need to know is that Donald Trump promised you he was going to work to support the American worker and that he was going to work to lower prices. And Donald Trump lied through his teeth. He's been doing nothing to lower prices. Really, what he's spending his time doing is trying to be buddies with billionaires, the CEOs of enormous companies, and leave American workers out to dry while jacking up prices for the everyday consumer.
So, Congressman, is your main opposition the motives behind these policies, or is it the fact that, for example, in the case of China, which is one of the countries that, to use your terms, I mean, clearly has in the past and in many industries been dumping into the United States with very little repercussions, right? Any negative repercussions. They have the way the human rights violations that China carries out within its own people and the Uyghurs. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how human rights are violated in China, and yet the products from China are welcome in the United States. So what is it? Is it a...
On April 3rd, 2025, former President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs, including a universal 10% tariff on all imports and higher targeted tariffs for dozens of countries. This announcement triggered a global market sell-off, resulting in the worst day on Wall Street since June 2020. Major indices fell sharply, wiping out trillions in value and erasing $208 billion from the net worth of the world's 500 richest individuals. The US dollar slumped and market instability spread to Asian and European markets.